At this time, I would like to turn the microphone over to Cody Fiscus, who would like to offer a toast to our newlyweds.
So I'm going to read off my phone because I have 4 kids and I forget everything. So I apologize now. Good evening, everyone. I'll keep this short because the longer I talk, the more nervous the groom will get. Now, as best man, it is my job to say something nice about Jace. But I've known him too long for that. Seriously though, Jace, you found someone amazing in Sid, aka Crosby. She's smart, kind, and clearly has terrible taste in men. So let's raise a glass to love, laughter, and to Sid finally getting the better deal in this relationship. Cheers.
How about a big round of applause for Cody Fiscus? Next, I would like to turn the microphone over to Jenna Bartley, who would also like to offer a toast.
As I look around this room, it is truly wonderful seeing so many friends and family come together from near and far to celebrate 2 very special individuals. If we have not met yet, my name is Jenna, and I am delighted to be standing here tonight. Growing up, we make many friends throughout our childhood that we consider to be our best friends. Those whom we did everything with, like having lunch in the cafeteria, playing sports, having sleepovers, running errands, and so much more. But as we get older, we start to realize who our real friends are. I thought that when I graduated high school, I would still be friends with the ones I grew up with forever. But that didn't happen to be the case. Instead, a small school in a town called Waynesburg introduced me to a real friend. One who is loyal, supportive, truthful, even when it hurts, hardworking, and determined, for which I'm forever grateful for. Sid, looking back on our friendship over the past decade is pretty incredible. We've lived together for 3 years in East Hall, and I'm not entirely sure how you dealt with me for that long. Had many heart-to-hearts sitting on your Veer Bradley comforter, and the countless jam sessions in your car, whether we were bumping through the streets of Waynesburg or to and from several other destinations. But to be completely honest, we still do this today. There were a few times where we find ourselves looking for something to do, and what better than braless and flawless that runs to Walmart or Sheetz for a late night snack. But I could stand here all night talking about all the fun times we've shared together. But in all seriousness, you're truly one of a kind and always bring out the best in people. You're not only my best friend, but a sister to me. Even though I've not witnessed your relationship with Jace from the beginning, it did not take long for me to realize the type of man he is. Through his actions, he has shown what it means to be a reliable, knowledgeable, and supportive partner. One who will stand by you through all of life's changes. Jace, it has been so great getting to know you more over the past few years. Thank you for always being there for Sid and cherishing her with unconditional love. I'm super happy and excited for you both as you begin this next chapter of your lives. The past year planning, coordinating, and sharing these special once-in-a-lifetime moments with you and your families has been amazing. I cannot thank you enough for letting me be a part of it. So if I could ask everybody to raise their glasses with me. To the happy couple, here's to love, laughter, and a lifetime of happiness.
How about a big round of applause for Jenna Bartley? Next, I would like to turn the microphone over to the father of the bride, Mr. Chad Prue, who would also like to say a few words.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all of you guys for coming out tonight and celebrating Sydney and Jace at their wedding night. I hope all of you enjoy some great food and drinks this evening. Hope you engage in a lot of good conversation and laughter with friends and family. And I hope maybe a little bit later on we see you do a little boogie woogie going on. And definitely, obviously, with the weather, please have a safe trip home this evening. And I hope all of you wake up tomorrow morning and say to yourself, that was a good time. I had fun. It actually started in January of this year. We're sitting at home on our couch, and Marcy kind of says out of the blue to me, she said, what do you think you'd want to say? Sometimes she leaves out the essential details of a question as to what the topic is. So I say about what? And she said, well, say it's Sydney and Jace's wedding. I said, do I have to speak? And she said, well, you don't have to, but I figured that you would want to. So those of you that probably know me, mostly would say, yeah, Chad's going to want to say something. I thought to myself, do I want to say something? I said, sure, yeah, I want to say something. But unfortunately, at that point in time, the pressure was on. I had to think of, what do I want to say to Sydney and Jace tonight? What words of wisdom or insight or guidance would I have for them? Or would I just want to tell them a little bit about how I feel? So I thought a little bit about it. I thought about my wedding night. I thought about whenever Marcy and I got married, the excitement and the exhilaration of that, the idea and thought of sharing your life with someone, and the adventures that you would embark upon together. And I thought, a little bit beyond that, I thought when we first decided to start a family together. And just as the maternal instinct kicks in for a mother, I like to call it for a man, the defender, the protector instinct kicks in. So at that point, no. And I was willing to embrace that. That was going to be my job. And I held that with honor. And now God blessed us with a daughter and a child, or a son, excuse me. Sorry. And I knew that it would be no more or no less, having one of each. But I knew that they would be different, that the times that I would need to come into play and be their protector would be different. I knew in having a little girl that at some point in time in her life that a little boy would come into the picture. Now, to be quite honest with you, Sydney was pretty easy. Sydney throughout elementary school and his first part of high school, I don't remember a lot about boys being in there. Now, Marcy and Sydney may have kept me in the dark with that. Maybe so, I'm not quite sure. But she seemed to be more focused on her schooling and extracurricular activities and things along that line. So I remember the first time when Marcy says to me, she said, well, Sydney's kind of liking this little boy named Jace Rare. And I knew at that point in time, and so it begins. So I thought, I had to actually get a little information from Sydney probably a month or so ago. And she probably mentioned, why are you asking me this stuff? And I thought, I just wanted to get my story straight. But I said to her, I said, well, so when Sydney, when are you, when Jason, you guys come? She said, Dad. She gave me a little toot, by the way, with this. She said, Dad, everybody knows that Jason and I started dating on February 14th on Valentine's Day. Well, I obviously had forgot to mark that down on my calendar and my dates to remember list because I had forgotten about it. But then she said, and our first date was whenever you and Mom took us to the Pirate Gate. I did remember that. By the way. And she said, yeah, you stood at the top of the steps and said, what is he, Amish? Now, I honestly don't remember saying that at all, really. Sorry, Jace, I think it was the haircut. Sorry. But the date that I remember with all of that was whenever Jace came over to our house for a birthday party. I thought to myself, okay, Dad, here's your job. Okay, here's your chance to kind of, tell him a little bit about your expectations of him. So I thought, you know what? How's the best way to set and do that? I thought, I could go with my old standby, show him your gun collection. So I thought, whenever he got over here, I'd lay out all of my guns, my ARs, my shotguns, and all my pistols on the table. And then when he come in, I'd bring him in to take a look at them. I'd introduce him to my Raging Bull 454 and just tell him a little bit about the size holes that they can put in things or people if need be. I thought I would take him around my house and show him all the mounts and everything that I have on the walls, just to let him know that I was a pretty good shot and that I don't mind killing things. But I thought, you know what, Chad? He has older brothers. He's probably heard this before. It's so old school. So I thought he probably will be desensitized to it a little bit. So it won't pack that punch that I'm looking for. So I thought, you know what? You got to be creative, Chad. You got to step up your game, man. So I thought, you know what? I can make a poster. I can make a poster with my face on it and put America's Most Wanted on there and have a list of outstanding warrants and charges and a reward for my arrest. I can show them that paper and say, you know what? Obviously, you have to catch me, and that if I find out there's any monkey business going on with my daughter, that one more additional charge wouldn't be that big of a deal. And that if they hadn't caught me yet, the chances of them finding his body would be slim to none. But so often, as I do with stuff, when we're having activities at our house and everything, I'm always working like up to that last 10 or 15 minutes. And Marcy's constantly chirping at me about, get upstairs, hurry, get showered, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm always running up the steps. I'm always trying to get showered. I'm always trying to get back down before other people get in here. And inevitably, I'm always late. So I remember coming back down into the kitchen. And I remember looking out the kitchen. Jace was already there. And I remember looking at them. I remember looking at Sydney, kind of with her hands crossed, in a kind of timid kind of way. And I remember Jace having his hands jammed in his pocket saying, what the hell am I doing here? And Marcy doing what always Marcy's doing, trying to get close together and getting pictures and everything. And I remember looking out there and saying to myself, and kind of chuckled a little bit and just saying, nerds! Look at those two little geeks out there. And I thought to myself, I'm not. So I just went outside and I enjoyed my cake and ice cream and a beer. And I thought nothing of it. Well, I guess little did I know, right? So fast forward a little bit here, a couple years, to remember the next time that I knew I was going to say something to Jace to assert myself as father. Marcy says to me, she said, hey, can you take Sydney, over to the intersection of 85 and Margaret to meet Jace? He's going to drive them to a birthday party that his family would have. His family has birthday parties for everybody. And I remember saying, what? No. I said, did he even get his license yet? He was, I think, 16 and a half at that point. And I'm like, no. And I remember us going around about a little bit with it. The difference between an only child and one of eight. You get a chance to do everything and maybe not do it as much. My siblings will laugh at me because I got to do a lot more than they ever did. But I said, no, I'm not into that. But I ultimately gave in. And I ultimately said, you know what? I'm going to be in the know. I'm not going to, not say something to him, and I'm going to know what's going on. So I thought, you know what? What could I do? How can I really figure that out? So I thought, you know what? I'll bug Sydney's purse. I'll bug her purse and everything. That way I'll know everything that's going on. I'll know what's being planned. If they're planning any monkey business, I'll be there. I'll know. But I thought, you can't bug her purse, Chad. She doesn't even take a purse most of the time. So that's going to, if she doesn't bring it, you're going to be screwed. So I'm like, you know what? I'll just gradually walk outside, and when I'm talking to Jace, and I'll just nonchalantly put a GPS tracker on his car. And I thought, that way I won't hear what's going on, but I'll see what's going on. I'll know where they're at. If they get on any dead-end roads or anything like that, I'll make sure I'm able to be there in time. And I said, Chad, you know what? You can't do that. It's not even Jace's car. It's going to be Robert Marsh's car, and I think they're going to frown greatly on the fact that you put a GPS tracker on their car. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go right over and I'm going to put the fear of God into this kid. I'm going to go over there and I'll tell him if I find out that he's rip, snort, and tear, doing anything, speeding anything with my daughter or trying any monkey business, I'm going to introduce him to that Raging Bull 454. And I thought, you know what, you can't do that, Chad, because you know what? Robin Marsh is probably going to frown greatly upon the fact that you're threatening their child, and Jason's going to be so, befuddled with that whole thing that he's going to probably make a mistake while he is driving. So I thought to myself as we're driving over there, I thought, you know what, Chad? Be assertive, not aggressive, but make sure he gets the message of what your expectations are of him. So I decided whenever we got out, I would say to Jace, I get out around the car. So I did. I got out around the car. I walked out, and I thought, you know what? Sydney saw me, so she winds down the window. I walk in, or I leaned over and said, hey, Jace. And Jace, it is. I think Jace has spoken 5 words to me in that 3 years or whatever, and I'm not even so sure they were words. For the longest time, I wasn't even sure that he could speak. And I'll be honest with you, I have a little resentment towards Jace because I think he started the onset of my hearing loss, because all I ever remember saying was, huh, what? What'd he say? Huh? But just a quick side note, I'm going to tell a little bit about Jace that I got to learn over the years. Okay, he may sound soft-spoken or be soft-spoken, but I tell you what, you get him gaming, okay? You will hear volumes out of him that you've never heard, and you'll hear an old new set of vocabulary that you never heard him say. And I'm going to give you a little blackmail information here. He laughs like a schoolgirl. He giggles. I mean, I'm telling you. We have sat out there, Marcy and I have sat out in the living room and turn off the volume on the TV, or turn off the TV, because the action that's going on in there is more entertaining than what's on the TV at all. And I never met even Aldo before, about a month and a half ago. But I'll tell you what, I started rooting for Aldo. You started getting into the action. You started rooting, because Aldo was never in the right place, according to Jace. So it was like, get to the chopper, and Aldo was never there. Poor Aldo. But all joking aside, I won't remember it verbatim, but I do remember leaning over and saying to Jace, I've considered you to be a respectful and responsible young man. I would continue to expect you to be a respectful and responsible young man while you have my daughter in your car and her life in your hands. And please do not let me hear anything otherwise. And I let him go. And I remember driving home that day, a bit in a panic, and thinking to myself, you just let her go with a 16 and a half-year-old. And it was your job. It was your job to protect her. And it's your responsibility. And I thought to myself, if anything happens to her, I will never forgive myself. And I wouldn't have. But obviously that day went well. We've had many events between now and then. And I just want to say, Jace, thank you. Thank you for never making me question the type of guy that you were, or maybe ever questioning your level of integrity or your level of responsibility. I thank you. I don't thank you as enough, and you're never really going to understand, but I thank you. So today, Jace, I say to you, good luck, buddy. I tried to warn you. You didn't leave. I did a heck of a lot more than you than my follow-on did. Yeah, thanks, Dawn. Hey, thanks, buddy. Yeah. Way to let me know. I'd only known. My God. But all joking aside, Jace, I say to you, you have married my little girl. You've taken her hand in marriage. I now ask you to be her protector, to be her defender, to make sure nothing ever happens to her, and to be willing to pay the ultimate price to make sure nothing ever does. That I ask of you tonight. Sydney, Pumpkin, I say to you, I will always be your father. I will always be your protector, and I will always be your defender until the day the good Lord takes me off of this earth. That will never change. I promise you that. I just have somebody to help me with that now. To the both of you, I say, marriage is a wonderful thing. Hey, As long as you have love, and as long as you care for each other, as long as you support one another, as long as you communicate, as long as you put the other one's, feelings and thoughts ahead of your own, and that you're willing to work hard, because sometimes it pushes you. Sometimes it pushes you to the nth degree. Sometimes you don't think, you're like, what am I doing this all for? But as long as you have all of those things and more, you'll make it through whatever it is that you set your mind out to do. And I look forward to seeing what both of you can accomplish together. I look forward to being there with you along the way in the process. And that if you so choose to ever have a family of your own, you'll know exactly what myself, your mother, Sid, and your parents, Jace, are feeling tonight. And then, Jace, if God ever blesses you with a little girl, you'll know exactly what I'm feeling tonight. I wish you both nothing but the best. We love you both. And may God be with you each and every step along the way.
How about a big round of applause for Mr. Chad Prue?